Hello, welcome to the very first installment of the Archiver series. Today's episode will be about how to make a fossil. And because I know that my fossil is fake, it's not really an actual fossil, I'm just going to push the idea further and make it a little bit funnier by fossilizing a model of a Polish old car called Syrena. We are going to need a sculpey clay, some kind of oil-based soft clay that doesn't harden when exposed to the air. Plaster, some casting material. I used HYDROCAL because it's a little bit more durable and harder than plaster. And some precautions, respirator and gloves. First, we will have to soften the clay so that we can make a nice, accurate and precise impression of our fossil. You can just knead the clay with your hands and warm it up, or this works too. When the clay is soft enough, you can flatten it on a surface. Make sure that your object fits within that flat disc, so that the background for the fossil is large enough. And before pressing the object against the clay, it's always nice to use some water. Oil-based clays are quite sticky, so I'm just preventing the car from getting some clay on its surface. And also, because we're going to press, make sure you don't use very expensive collectibles or use softer clay. And also try to wiggle it a little bit so that the shape can be distributed all over the surface. If there are some parts sticking out, just use the side that has least of those. This car has a mirror only on the driver's side, so I used the other side to make this impression, and it looks quite nice. And the next part is a little bit adventurous. It requires some looking around and exploring. If the weather is nice, you can go outside and look for some coarse surfaces like sandstone or even some rugged looking concrete. It's going to be used to create a background for our fossil. Make sure you clean the surface before pressing, because right now the background is not looking very realistic, so this will give us nice texture. And again, pressure here is quite high, and it will distort our fossil a little bit, which is actually quite interesting, because it will make the fossil look like it really was subjected to some strong forces. Because the clay here is oil-based, we can just pour plaster directly on it without using any release substances. I'm using quite small amount of water. This is not even half a cup, and you will see that plaster dissolves in water very rapidly, and there's quite a large amount of it needed in order to create even not very thick mixture. So first you just kind of dump the plaster into the water and just observe how it dissolves. And when you see that the plaster starts to gather on the surface, or it doesn't dissolve as rapidly, you can start mixing carefully so that you don't create too many bubbles. So the more you whip it, the more it will look like a whipped cream with just bubbles. Just make sure to clean the surface, brush some contamination off, and pour. Just first address the details of the object. Make sure that the thin mixture gets into all those grannies and nukes and crannies, and then expand the pouring until you get all the way to the edges. And you can let it set. It's always nice to also shake it a little bit to enable the plaster to really go into all those cracks. And after it's set, it's still soft enough to make some kind of texture for the next layer to bite, because next layer is necessary to enforce the plate. For more reinforcement, I placed some thin sticks in a kind of diagonal pattern, and for even more reinforcement I decided to use some fibers from a twine rope. You can use various types of fibers you can use canvas. Make sure you don't use anything that rusts, like metal mesh, because the rust in connection with wet plaster will create weird coloration that might bleed through. And I'm going to put some of those fibers in the mixture. Let them soak, and then just apply them like so. I'm avoiding the edges with the fibers because after I trim the edges, the fibers might stick out, which I don't want to happen. And then some final cosmetic work to make the back flat. And here we have our Faux-sil set, hardened and ready to be painted. Thank you for watching.